Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast with me, Jude Morrow. And I was delighted last week to get up and running again to have an episode put up. And thank you to everybody for all the likes, shares, ratings, comments, and everything else. I value them all, and you're absolutely wonderful. And I can't thank you enough for that. So, we are on the path to being a bit more consistent and getting an episode up every week. They're going to be out every Friday. And since I put up last week about the needing new podcast guests, the Calendly link just absolutely exploded. We'll have loads of episodes in the pipeline, and if it keeps going the way it's going, we'll have about 73 years worth of podcasts to tie everybody over for the next several decades. So thank you for that. So I suppose I should start at the start with all the plugs. I've got a fancy new website, judemorrow.com. The Neurodiversity Trained International website is actually undergoing maintenance at the minute, so it doesn't look as fancy, but we're getting there. That's neurodiversity-training.net. And you can support our podcast on patreon.com/neurodiversity gold podcast. That is patreon.com/the neurodiversity gold podcast, where you can become an executive producer of the show, get exclusive merch and other handy little perks and benefits and Q&As and all the other lovely stuff. And this is a guest episode, and my first guest is for this series is a long-term friend of NTI, who's also an autistic expert by experience, a training and development provider. David has provided training for NTI on a lot of occasions to great acclaim. David provides professional one-to-one support, is an autism needs assessor, blogger, advocate, post-grad student, OAMT co-facilitator, an all-around good guy. And my guest today is David Crisp. David, how are you?
Fine. Well, after that build-up, I can't wait to meet myself.
Well, you know what? That is just directly from your LinkedIn profile.
I know.
Which, may I add, your logo on your cover page looks absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I think there's some Irish fellow that gave me a little hand with it, so we did.
Yes, I did.
Are we leprechaun?
A wee leprechaun. Well, I'm getting closer to that because I've no hair or on my face and anymore, and I'm losing weight. So I'm getting closer to that. Maybe in width, but not in height. I don't think I would pass for a leprechaun very easily. Although I wish I would whenever it would come to like planes and stuff where I get more leg room and everything. But I suppose the first thing I wanted to ask was from your profile. It says OMMT co-facilitator. What's that?
Well, the reason why that's in, because it's a lot of letters. It stands for Oliver McGowan Mandatory Training. It's the mandatory training in autism and learning disabilities. There's two sides to it. I've been involved in the autism side of it. I was involved in the project from day one, very early on, with the National Autistic Society, and we just wait for the national rollout. It's basically it's mandatory training. Currently just going to be for England only, which is mandatory in law since 22nd of May. And once that's the final project is ready, I should be one of the autism experts by experience. I hope that will be delivering this at a local level in Northamptonshire and the surrounding areas in England. And basically, it was set up, campaigned by on behalf of a young man called Oliver McGowan, whose mum, Paula McGowan, set this up because he sadly had autism, cerebral palsy, learning disabilities, and epilepsy. To cut a long story short, he was given antipsychotic drugs because of his behavior when he was in hospital, because of the autism sensitivities of being in hospital, and that ended up producing tonic-clonic seizures. And it was written all over his notes, do not give this young man these drugs, but they still kept doing it. And eventually, because they were ignoring his wishes and the parents, he ended up having a major episode, which sadly caused for him, ended up in ITU, and sadly he died. And his mum's campaign is about not portioning blame, although obviously there will be court cases going on, but it's more about moving discussion forward and providing mandatory training for everybody, whether in private or public, that works in health and social care. There even are calls possibly along the lines of extending it to education as well, but certainly in those two areas, because we all know, as you know yourself, Jude, that the health inequalities for autism are quite vast. And sadly, I'm 56. I'm actually beyond the average life expectancy of many autistic people being 53. So this is an important thing. It's been late in coming, and I hope they can roll out nationally as soon as possible. I'll keep putting my finger on the post trying to chivvy it along. So I hope that'll come to fruition very soon.
As do I. I really hope it comes to fruition, because I can say this as a former health and social care professional, right? Even though, yes, I was autistic myself but wasn't really kind of at peace with it. But I can safely say I never had any autism training, nor do a lot of people I know that were still there. And you would be amazed. I can just sort of speak from a local level, and then whenever I get the network and connect with the likes of yourselves and others, that health and social care professionals, by and large, don't have any autism training because it's not mandatory. It's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, and the best thing about this is that it was developed with autistic people involved. That the videos are autistic people, the scripts are written by autistic people, the training packages written by autistic people, and at least it's usually delivered by two people, of which at least one of those two must be autistic. Obviously, it obviously depends on how eloquent the autistic person may be in sharing their experiences. And they may need someone to do the more early sort of medical model, which you have to cover at the beginning, but then for the and they may feel a bit unhappy with that and at ease with that, but then and obviously and again make sure that maybe they don't overshare personal information about themselves, so and keep it on track. But usually it's two autistic people that deliver it, which is brilliant. It's it's the first national campaign I can think of that's totally driven by purely autistic people from the outset, rather than us being an add-on. It's, as you know yourself, it's we shouldn't be outside looking in when it comes to training. It should be from us outside, from our own experience, because we live it every day. You can learn about autism from books, you can study it for decades, so you can become knowledgeable about it, but I would not say experience. I think that you could only get that experience through living it or living with it. I mean, sometimes parents, maybe if they spent many years living with some persons that's with an autistic son or daughter or brother or whatever, but it's still not the same. They're still looking at it from the outside in rather than the inside out, and which is one of the main driving forces. Well, the main driving forces for NTI, and it's certainly my main driving force as well.
And that kind of summation that you just gave, that summary, is literally why NTI exists to a certain extent. Now, with training and stuff like that, where with us, when we do it, kind of has a more of a kind of personalized or kind of corporate feel. But I think with the OAMT, the way it's going to be done is that while it's autistic involved, it's a great initiative. It's an entry level. It's something for most health and social care professionals that have nothing.
Yeah,
that have absolutely nothing.
And the good thing about it as well, there is an accompanying workbook which they fill in and do discussions and provide feedbacks. And the idea long term is that not only will you receive the training, 3 months down the line, they'll find out how you've implemented that knowledge, rather than just a tick box, I've got this autism training, which is what so much training is about, isn't it? It's not consolidating that learning, which is obviously the very important part of any training. It shouldn't just be a death by PowerPoint and learn and tick a tick box. It should be, now you've learned this, now put it into practice, and it's full of those sort of examples.
I've actually just went on to the website about the Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism, which enables the health and care workforce to better support people with learning disability and autistic people. And it's just as a kind of note to what you were saying, was that the Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism package, it's not yet available, but they are working with partners to finalize the standardized training packages and the trainer training for early 2023. And I'm just looking on, there's a website here, which is Oliver's campaign, which is Oliver McGowan, McGowan.org. And that's well worth checking out. And I remember whenever this campaign was starting, back in, I think it was about 2019, maybe earlier, maybe 2018. I'm not entirely sure, but it's fantastic how far they've come, and they have the full NTI salute for that. So I know you talked about like personal lived experience. I mean, for you, what, and it's probably a very broad question, but I mean, over the years, what has that lived experience been like for you?
Well, again, one of the reasons why I was so, once I heard about Oliver McGowan, I was so interested in, was about my lived-in experience, particularly being autistic myself, but also having two grown-up children that are autistic, particularly my daughter, who's had a terrible time a couple of years ago, this very month, in hospital. So I was able to use those experiences, but also use the positive experience when on some wards in the hospital, she was extremely well respected and well cared for. So again, it was, and I was unable to give practical examples. The other thing is as well is that like many late diagnosed autistics, I was diagnosed because of my children. You know, sometimes, particularly in my case, I was diagnosed before my children by the people that should have diagnosed my children. It's kind of like, well, we'll do a referral to our colleague in adults, and because you like your facts, Mr. Crisp, we'll get you. Yeah, we need to get you assessed and hopefully diagnosed. Initially, I thought, they're going to use this as a blunt stick to beat me with, but no, it's a very positive thing afterwards. And like many, I'm sure you had experience yourself. I had lots of depression, proper anxiety, never bad enough to go to hospital, but at one stage I even attempted suicide. I had a really bad, what I now know, serious meltdown at work and other issues going on. But had I known why I had such self-loathing at that time, not just because of things that were going on, and why I struggled with anxiety and depression and social relationships earlier on, then I would have had the ability to take a little bit more control of my life and having a better outcome. Certainly, starting Monday, for example, I'm starting my PG cert in autism adults by remote learning with Birmingham University. If you'd have told me when I was 16 I was going to go to university, I'd have laughed at you. I struggled to get the very mild GCEs when I was at school because I wasn't helped enough at school. College, never failed an exam. After college, never failed an exam. So you can see it wasn't about intellect, it was about the environment. 1,500 screaming boys as it was in the boys' school, one of the smallest kids in the school, getting bullied, getting picked on, socially outcast a lot of the times. So I wasn't able to feel my potential. So one of my driving forces to use that experience to help other people to feel their potential, to appreciate that you will meet your goals. It may sometimes take longer, but you will get there. And life's a struggle. And so it's helped me a lot. I've been supporting autistic adults from, I know we don't like the term spectrum anymore, but across the whole of the spectrum, people that are non-verbal and have a severe learning disability, to those that are able to go out and work and need minimum support. So, and I've used that to learn a lot more about myself, about my children, and that again, we've met one person that is autistic, you've met one person who's autistic. Everyone is unique, and very often they have other conditions as well, which mask their autism or affect them. And one of the good things about the Oliver McGowan is they make it strong point of looking at things like diagnostic overshadowing. Because someone's displaying strange behavior, it may mean that they have a mental illness, but it could just be their sensory overload because of their autism. So again, don't naturally assume because someone's odd that they're mentally ill. It could just be they're behaving in a certain way because of their autism. But equally, because they're autism, they may have genuine anxiety and may need mental health input. So again, don't let one discard the other. So again, it's about people seeing the whole picture. And that's my big drive, really, is to not have the hell that my daughter went through to be diagnosed with other people.
And what is interesting, like to pick up on a point, like it's fair to say, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. But what kind of bands us together as a group is that we're often oppressed by the same things and face a lot of the same challenges, where people would have said to me, like even whenever I was in my teens, things like, oh, Jude, you don't need support. If you can pass exams, you don't need anything. Or, you can drive a car and you can run a business and you can do this and you can do that. Like, there's things I can admit on the airwaves that I do need support with. And one of those things, for an example, is an airport. I just can't do them. I cannot do airports at all. I struggle. The signs, everything. It's hectic. People bumping into me, people patting me down, having to step into the body scanner thing, because I'm always one of these people that's randomly searched, and it's probably because I look so suspicious because I'm so anxious.
Yeah.
Every single time, like whenever you go through like the body scanner thing, and one of them like points to their left, and there's like a pat down person. Where I'm always at that. I can't remember a flight that I've ever been on, or an airport I've ever been to, where that hasn't happened. Where they're probably trained to pick up anxiety as suspicion rather than this guy is absolutely terrified of this place and can't wait to get on the plane and go home or go to where he's going.
Yeah, I'll pick it up from that, is that they're scared, they're suspicious of a furtive Irishman traveling on a plane because of, sadly, a bit of politics there, but for the history. And again, and if you and it's kind of, if you're nervous, you're more likely to be picked up. I mean, there was away from autism, there was a case a few years ago when I was about 16, so you're talking 40 years ago now. God, that's horrible. of a person that was going around all the local hospitals in Northamptonshire stealing televisions. And he got away with it for so long because he was completely calm. Oh, I've come to take away your telly for repair. And NHS equipment invariably breaks down. And especially those days, it was a lot of it was secondhand. So people would open the doors for him, help him load it into the van, and he was nondescript. It's only when he went a bit too far and then started to get a little bit cocky and trying to take two or three from the same hospital at the same time, people say, "Hey, what are you doing with that television?" That you got caught. So again, as you say, it's like, that's why I think a lot of autistic people sometimes fall foul of the law, because in their behaviors, they might think, oh, they're high on drugs, because there they are stimming away like mad. I don't know why I'm doing that, because you can't see that in the podcast, but they're waving their arms about and stimming away and jumping around or whatever, because they're excited because it's maybe seen trains or something. Then the policeman thinks, oh, that person's going to jump in, or member of the public think, oh, it's like jump in front of a train. Call the policeman down, they put hands on him. One hand is enough because of their sensory need. So then a second, third, fourth, and before you know it, that person's in the cell with multiple bruises and got a reputation for being challenging. And all he was doing was excited because he's seen a train. So again, that's why I think, yes, the OAMT is brilliant, but I think it only needs to roll out as well eventually to things like the police force and court system as well, because often behaviours are misinterpreted as mental illness or psychopathy or just pure violence, when it's just down to an autism meltdown. So again, that's why autism is such an important thing.
And you know what? It's difficult, because what people have to go on in every setting is their pre-programmed unconscious bias. Where I know you said yes, oh, an Irishman always being searched, but that's probably in some people's psyche. If people hear an accent, be like, oh, we're going to search him, and that's quite sad, because what it's fueled by is is prejudice under the guise of keeping people safe.
It is.
Now,
It
that's a
is.
very dangerous path to go down, isn't it? I mean, if you look at some really, really nasty things in World War II, you know, we're protecting you, we're keeping you safe. You know, that kind of
Yeah.
angle. We're going to discriminate against people to keep the rest of the population safe. It's a really, really slippery slope. And I can see that happening for autistic people because you see in reports all the time, like uh whether it's autistic adults being shot at for being upset or punched or beaten or ejected from venues and stuff like that for having standard autistic emotional responses. And I mean, I know that autistic emotional responses is something that you have talked about in training
Yeah.
for. So, I mean, as far as emotional responses, I mean, for any training that you're providing going forward, is that going to be incorporated as well?
Yeah. There's another case as well. Of a man many years ago in the UK. I presume you would have heard about it as well. A gentleman called Gary McKinnon, who was
Yeah.
public enemy #1 for a few years in the United States because he hacked into the Pentagon looking for evidence of aliens and Area 51 and UFOs and all that sort of thing. And it went to court, and we managed, the UK government and the court managed to stop him being extradited to the United States. But again, it never occurred to them that what he was doing was a little bit offbeat, but more importantly, how insecure the Pentagon's internet must have been for him to hack it. Why not give him a job? No, he had actually done him a favor. If somebody innocent hacks into something like the Pentagon, I would think, if I was a security advisor, give that person a job, not try to put him in prison, because he has identified your security risks, and it's better that an innocent person identifies that than someone from the KGB or whoever is a threat to the United States. So far from punishing him, I just shook his hand and said, well done there. You have identified our problems, you know, but it didn't, that never occur to them. And it just seems bizarre to me that from day one, that would have been the first thing.
You know what? Now that you say that, it is very valid because one time, this was maybe about 2 years ago, we were sending people to like a hackathon, you know, through our network,
Yeah.
and a couple of them had, you know, law-breaking experiences of hacking things,
Yeah.
not necessarily for financial gain in every
Yeah.
case,
Yeah.
just to say I was able to do it.
Yeah.
And in one case, one was offered not a job. I mean, they went to jail, but then whenever they came out, they said, "Look, I want to put this to good use."
Yeah.
And I mean, like that's the skill, like the Pentagon server. Like, I mean, I can't imagine it was a very, very easy task, but it can really open eyes as to what we can actually do, especially in the tech and cyber security spaces, which
Yeah.
I mean the kind of concentration of autistic people in those industries are quite large compared to other things. It's just down to people look at it so negatively
Yeah.
that
So,
they, you know, they can't we seem to be the only exception to the silver lining rule,
yeah.
where there's no silver lining at all. It's just it's all bad, it's all awful, and you know we need to be kept away from the public view. But what I was going to ask was, and I don't know if like you know too much, but with the Oliver McGowan mandatory training,
Yeah.
is that going to be your full time whenever it rolls out, or are you still going to be doing stuff of your
No,
own?
I doubt if it'd be full time. I should just be one of many people. But because of the scale of it, you're talking 5 million employees potentially. Because it won't just be social workers; it'd be the person on reception. It'd be there'll be different tiers depending on the job you do, which makes sense. Obviously, if the more clinical people are going to need a bit more experience than someone who's just answering the phone. But because it's everybody, I can't see why that it may be almost full time, but the sheer scale of it, they're going to need literally tens of thousands of autistic people involved. So I can't see why, when that does roll out, why they wouldn't involve someone as part of the pilot. To me, it just sounds a no brainer. But but the thing is as well is because I've got that experience of my daughter was in hospital exactly 2 years ago, and they tried to say, well, she's not autistic, your seizure and epilepsy, and tried to prevent her coming home, tried to accuse her of faking all her illnesses and stuff. And now at this very moment, she's suffering quite badly with PTSD because of the trauma she had from hospital. So, and again, it's in a very easy way. What happened to my daughter, Oliver, could easily have been my daughter. She was having 12 seizures a day. Fortunately, they managed to stabilize her. But if they didn't believe it was genuine, like in his case, she could have been here. And we even, of all people, and I can say this because you don't know the hospital, and I'm not naming the person, of all people, it was a learning disability nurse that said to her, well, if you die from a seizure, then we'll know you're epileptic. And if that's a learning disability nurse, just goes to show how far we really have to go before we can have health equality in the NHS and in healthcare.
Yeah, but and there is so far to go, because whenever it comes to any kind of neurodivergent themed training, what I found, and this is kind of UK wide, and even is stretching over to the US, is that individual practitioners are almost self-autonomous in what they train in.
Yeah.
Where, for example, they can do autism training whenever and however they like, regardless whether it's relevant to their role or not. But what is never self-autonomous in any healthcare, it's the client base that you get. You have to go and see and support and nurture the people that the higher folks up the food chain give you. And they can be autistic people, they can be anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's absurd, because I mean, imagine for you, right? And I'm not calling you a grandpa, right? Imagine you had a
I'm at the right age, though,
assessment.
but sadly.
Imagine you had a physiotherapy assessment, and the
Yeah.
physiotherapist who came to see you said, you know what, I don't have any moving and handling training. Would you be very confident?
No.
Yeah. Of course you wouldn't, but
Exactly.
the thing is that they're specialized. Now, I hate this name, ASD teams.
Yeah.
Right? We'll say we haven't had any autism training,
Yeah.
but yet they call themselves a specialist service.
And the sad thing is, as you know, you're very proactive in this, and I certainly am as well, is nobody these days needs autism awareness training. If you're not aware that autism exists, where have you been for the last 50 years? The NAS has been going for 50 years. Autism itself.
60 this year, is it?
Yeah, you're right. 60 years, 62. Yeah, 60 years. Yeah. All right. So, and of course, before that, autism was first used as a label around in the 40s, and obviously it's been around for centuries. But as a diagnosis, it's been around a long time. So people know. The children of the 40s are grandparents now, or older, or passed on, so it's not a new thing. And we need to move away from this awareness to accepting that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be slightly quirky, slightly off-center, to think differently. And she's not my favorite person in some respect, but someone like Temple Grandin, she some of the things she says are quite controversial, but I agree with her on this bit. I think without a little bit of autism, and probably a lot of autism, we wouldn't have had the wheel, we wouldn't have had Made Fire, because it's the people that are not part of that social group that are sitting outside there spending a lot of their time thinking there must be an easier way of doing this, while the others are making out or they're thinking, wouldn't this meat taste better if it was cooked? Wouldn't it be easier if we rolled stuff rather than carried it? So then you get the wheel, and it makes sense, doesn't it? And that's how the great thinkers of the world. I'm not saying you can't prove they're all autistic. That's why a lot of people think they are, because you look at them, not only are they geniuses, but a lot of them are socially quite, for want of a better word, inept. Isaac Newton, for example, was socially terrible. Einstein wasn't good to his wife and was not a good father, and very, very odd in some of his behavior. But these great thinkers, we need them. Now, not every autistic is a genius, don't get me wrong, although I know Jude and I are, because we're modest with it. Yeah, and modest, yeah. But we're not, but we all have a certain gift, and it could be, yours is yours is the work you do, your entrepreneur, the understanding of autism, understanding of also neurotypicals for your work in social care as well. As a social worker, you understand the mechanisms and how other people think, because your intellect, you're able to use that as well to say, yeah, I can appreciate why you're thinking these about autistic people. But you can then, through your own autism experience, turn that on its head and saying, why should they try and think your way? Why don't you ever try and think their way? And again, that's why people such as yourself and other autistics are so much important in driving this forward. I foresee a time, maybe it may take a generation, when neurodiversity will be as big, if not a bigger thing, as the civil rights was. I mean, it was in the 60s, as big as LGBT was at the turn of the century. It's going to be that bigger, and people will no longer look at people that are neurodivergent as being odd, but just a different type of humanity, part of the great mystery of the human race, and treated equally.
Exactly. And you know what? I think that's probably just one of the biggest kind of mic drop monologues we've ever had in the podcast.
Oh,
Just
thank you.
I mean, cliches are often cliches for a reason, because often they're true, and I suppose that's where variety is the spice of life comes from. But what I wanted to ask you about finally was, I mean, you do a lot of training. You're kind of partnered up with a lot of people, but your own kind of entity is wired for autism.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's obviously the reason for the title. I'm trying to think of something different. Maybe looking back might not be the best, because obviously if you're Googling it, it's a W, it's towards the end of the alphabet. I should have thought about that. But why I say that is because we are different. All of us that are autistic are wired differently. We're not defective in any way, shape or form. We just process information maybe in a different way, or we get to that answer in a different way. And the great analogy is the Microsoft computer with Apple software. Whatever, there are pros and cons of both systems, but you cannot put software from one into the other system, which just will not go. But it doesn't mean that one is necessarily superior or inferior to the other. They all have their pros and cons, and the same with autistic and non-autistic or neurotypical people. So that was my thinking behind it. And because I'm for autism, pro autism. I'm not a great autism eco warrior as it was. I don't want to think that we're superior than people that aren't autistic. Just we're the same as them. So we share the same humanity. And I know I've had problems before now. I put something down if people say, oh, I don't like it when you talk about autism being a disability. And I would argue that every single person that's autistic is disabled. It's whether or not they are intrinsically disabled or extrinsically by how society treats them. If you have no learning disability and you're academically brilliant and all this sort of thing, but you can't get a job because you struggle with interviews, you are disabled, whether you like it or not. Society has made it tough for you to get on in business, even though you're probably a million times better than the person that gets the job. You've got the experience, you've got the intellect, you've got the skills, you've got the knowledge, but you don't know how to suck up to the boss. You don't know how to answer the right questions in the right way. Your handshake's not firm enough. You're not doing the really good eye contact. You're maybe not answering things fast enough because you're processing the information, trying to digest what, amongst all this rubbish this person's saying in this question, what are the main things they're trying to ask you? They're bombarding you with too much information. So that's the ethos of what I do, and it's the ethos of what you do. And it was one of when I started really trying to sell expand my social network on LinkedIn. Jude was one of the first person that really jumped out at me. I thought this guy really gets it. First time we met, I thought this is, and I'm not a great fan of social workers. I thought, I wish he'd have been my daughter's social worker. This person is likable, he's human, and he's autistic. A lot of people say things like, you can't be autistic because you've got a sense of humor. You can't be autistic because you've got prevent eye contact. We're doing both. We're displaying humor at times. We're using eye contact. because we are different. Everybody is different. And also we have learnt in life in the UK, include, you know, Ireland as well, that if you don't show eye contact, it's not socially acceptable. So we've had to learn to do certain things as well, because that's what society says. If we were in Japan, I'm sure we'd probably be happier, because we'd be not expected to do eye contact, which would be great. So again, society plays a big part as well. So yeah, so I'm feel privileged to be asked, be the first person on this new chapter in Jude's podcast history, but and great to have a catch up with what I consider to be one of the leading lights, not just nationally but internationally, on pushing the neurodiversity agenda, but in a way that's trying to bring everybody with us, rather than neurotypicals at one side and neurodivergent people at the other, about saying we'll work together and remove those barriers.
And you know what, that means the world to me. It really does, because even whenever I was sort of starting out in this journey, you know, you're somebody like that has always kind of been there. And I mean, I've always been grateful for it. And you know what, I've loved catching up with you. I really have. I genuinely have. I mean, I don't have to tell you not to be a stranger. I mean, because I'm not a stranger, neither are you. And it's great. And I suppose the final thing for me to say, other than thanking you for coming on the show and setting the benchmark incredibly high for every other guest that comes on. To learn more about David Crisp and his work, visit wiredforautism.co.uk. Please connect with David as well on LinkedIn, just under David Crisp AU. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. It was a fantastic episode, David. It was a pleasure, as always, to have you here. And I will see you all next week with a brand new episode of the Neurodiversity Gold Podcast.